Okay, this is video number 2 on drawing portraits. Last class we got into just getting it set up. And so I've been using the example of AOC here for my portrait. And today I want to show you a little bit about how you go about drawing the facial features, the eyes, nose, and mouth, and ears. And those things are just sometimes a little difficult, so you got to practice them. So before you get into uh, getting into your portrait again, I recommend doing what we're going to do right now, and that is taking a blank sheet of paper and let's practice drawing those facial features. By the way, this portrait would be considered something that is just straight on, where the person is looking right back at you, and they're not at an angle, they're not looking up or down, and their head isn't tilted too far to the left or to the right. I recommend that you find a photo oriented kind of like this one um, for this particular project, just straight on portraits. What I was working on last class was a portrait of her, and I've been adding a little bit more, and we'll get into this later about how do you kind of finish it up. I'm happier with it. It's starting to look more like her, and sometimes it just takes modifications, and we'll get into that uh, in the next class when we get to that point. Here's where you should be right now, though. We drew the oval. Remember, it's not circular, it's more egg-shaped. And then we added some guidelines. We went a guideline up on top, on bottom, and remember our middle line is the eye line. That's where, contrary to what we tend to think, that's halfway from the chin to the top of the head. And then this line here is your eyebrow line. And the significance of that is that, remember, we want that to be halfway between the chin and the eyebrow line. Find that line, and that's where the bottom of the nose is going to be. Okay, before we get into that, I want to talk about drawing these particular parts of the face. So let's get into it here. Each person looks different. Each eye, nose, mouth looks different. So you might want to just take a piece of scratch paper and practice drawing these. A good way to do the eyes is lightly draw a line like that, and then kind of draw a football or an almond and have it go up and down like that. And then you have it go up and down like that. And that's a good way to start. Again, you might be doing a portrait where their eyes look different from this, and then you just adapt. What I then do is remember that the round part of your eye is the iris, and that is a perfect circle. And so I say just draw that in there like that. And then the pupil is the black part of the eye, which is really what we see through. And that can be various sizes depending on how bright or dark it is out. Your pupil can dilate. And this is a good way to start. Now, we don't walk around day to day like that. Our eyelid kind of goes in front of that. So then I would say this is a good way to do that. Notice I'm not erasing all that stuff right now, but I can do that later. So this is a basic start for an eye. And then if this was, let's say, the right eye of that person, you could practice drawing in that eyebrow. And you're just going to have to use that photo to practice that, okay? And because, again, every eyebrow looks different. You can shade in later and do that sort of thing. There's oftentimes things like that. Eyes can have eyelashes, depending on how visible they are. You can practice these sorts of things. At some point, you might say, well, that's bothering me, so I'm going to erase that. But you know that this is circular. This is good. All right, so you can start practicing drawing an eye. Like that. Okay, down here you could get into some of those details. I won't bother with it much. A lot of what you're going to draw is observational, meaning you're looking at a photograph and you're drawing what you see. And before you get into drawing your actual portrait, you can practice them. So there's a basic structure of how you would draw an eye. Okay? All right, let's draw a mouth. All right, so the mouth can be, again, you can have a smile, you can have a frown, you can have a neutral face in your portrait that you're working on, and it might even be an open mouth where you can see teeth. But for mine, the mouth is closed, and I'm going to show you that first. So I usually go up above the line. It's good to draw that line, and then lightly, and then you can kind of go from there. It goes down like that. There's a little valley in the middle, and it goes down like that. The lower lip is often bigger, thicker this way, and shorter this way. So, in other words, you might start it like here. Then it might go up and down real quick there like that. And again, you want both sides symmetrical or the same. The middle of the top lip sometimes goes down and up. Okay. And then that is basically how you get it going. And then again, looking at your photograph, you can see how you want to shade that in. And that can come later. You can practice that, make this a little darker, make this a little bit lighter by pushing down less. Keep those separate there. And darker right there. That helps differentiate the lower lip from the upper lip. And you can kind of practice with that. Often on the sides, you'll have some dimples or not. It depends on the person. And those details are what make us all look a little bit different. Okay, and those are those specific characteristics. So there's the mouth. Okay, if you're going to do an open mouth, again, I would say that it's something that is specific to the photo you choose. I draw the top lip, and then I draw it down like that. And the teeth can be kind of like this. If I make mistakes, I just go right over them. The incisors, and then they kind of fade back. The bottom lip's going like this, so maybe we can see the bottom teeth a little bit. And I'm drawing from my imagination right now. And memory. You know, I've drawn a lot of these portraits, so I can kind of remember about what they look like. And then the lower lip would go like that. And back up there. So anyway, this is, maybe this video is getting a little long, but this is important stuff. So, and then in here would be dark. But it's important that you guys take a sheet of paper and practice this as well. Have fun with it. Take some practice. You don't just all of a sudden magically begin and you're a great portrait drawer. It takes some practice. And I'm giving you guys a lot of extra days to get this assignment done so that you have some time to work on it, so that you don't feel rushed, so you can work on it a while and leave it alone and come back to it. Okay, so there's a mouth that's open. Okay, all right. Then lastly, I'll show you, well, maybe not lastly, but I'll show you the nose. If we draw a line like that, and that's where the eyebrow goes, and it's going to come down like that. The nose is going to go down, and often the way we're going to start it is if you draw a T like this, and these are, assuming these are the lines we drew, then your nose is going to start right there. We know that that's the middle, and that intersecting point on your face, as we'll see in the next class, that's where that nose is going to start. It kind of curves up. And the nose, maybe more than any other facial feature, is different from person to person. You know, you're going to have an incredibly diverse, if you look at pictures of people, everybody's nose is distinct, maybe more so than other parts of the face. And I'm going to show you kind of a wider, big nose. And it just kind of goes up, and then it goes up to here. This is the eyebrow line. Let's say this is the eye line. So you're going to have your eyes right here. So before you start on your final, I want you to do this practicing, okay? And you can start to see it take shape. Noses can be skinnier, but they should be pretty much in the middle. You can see this is kind of running a little bit crooked, but that's what practice is for. And just go over those mistakes, try it out, and see what you come up with. And that's going to make you more confident when you start on your final drawing. The last thing is ears. And ears are probably the weirdest thing. When you start to draw an ear, it can be awfully strange. In this case, of course, people with long hair like AOC, you don't see the ear as much. You don't see the full ear. And so rather than show you an example, I think you just have to look at an example that you're drawing from, whatever you're choosing to draw from. In this case, there's a lot of hair interfering. There's some portraits where you can't see the person's ears at all because of their hair. And in that case, then, you know, that's one less thing you have to worry about. But in this case, I mean, look at that. That's a strange shape. But when I drew it, I just focused on what I saw in the photograph, and then I worked from there. And as I got further along in it, I started to make more adjustments. So I want you to give that a try. Practice the ear. It's not really, there's not one way to do it. There's so many variables that go into what does an ear look like in a photograph of a person. So play around with the ear as well. So if today's lesson gets you to this point where you've practiced drawing these facial features, then I think that you're in good shape for next class when we start taking those and adding them to our face. For today, just spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes, however long you can, however long you want to, and practice drawing all of these facial features, and then you'll be in great shape for our next class when we kind of put all the pieces together and make it look like a final portrait.